Hello everyone and welcome back to Wratting Road. So as you can see, I've been working on the Diorama recently. I've been weathering the track, and then also the track to the left, I've added that as well and ballasted it. The glue for the ballast is currently going off. I'm not going to say much more about that because that's the topic of a future video. I'm not going to leave any spoilers, so I apologise for that. So I have been doing some track weathering and I've been practicing on the Diorama as well. I've also been working on the main layout. This video was meant to turn out differently than what it has done. Ran into quite a bit of trouble while working this week on the layout and the Diorama. Had a load of snags and mess up with filming. So in the end I scrapped the original clips of me building the thing up. But I still did manage to get some decent time lapses in, so I've used every advantage I could to get some work shown on how I do everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the layout now and just show you what I've been doing on there as well. So before working on the layout, I practiced on the Diorama and I did try two different methods, but one just turned out really badly, which was another reason why the video didn't turn out the way it should have done. So what I've done is just stick to the airbrushing method. The other method that I tried was the pipette with watered down paints method. I've seen that used on quite a few layouts with some really nice results, but I just think the level of weathering I wanted to achieve just wasn't really cut out for it. It was just best to weather everything by airbrush, I think. Anyway, I'll be working on the line at the back. So this line right at the back here. What that line is the reception road for the depot and the sidings. So what I've done is I started off just where the foot crossing is on the right here, and then I done about a metre or so upwards to the left and just stopped just beyond that point up the top there, and also just in front of the Class 66, currently sitting pretty on the main line. Just ignore that patch there in the middle. That's just a patch up from where some ballast decided to come loose. But what I'm going to do, which is slightly different, is I've showed you the finished product of how I weather everything like the track and the ballast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go back in time and show you how I build everything up, so you can sort of see the finished results and then the method. Just do it slightly different really. But anyway, I'm going to get straight into it and I hope you enjoy the video. So I'm now just going to rewind back in time a little bit. So it's been a while since I've got the Diorama board out. So far I've got some track down along with some line side detailing and ballasting. And what I've also done is some track weathering, the rails. You can't really make it out in this clip, but you'll see later on shortly once I get up closer with the camera. So the next stage for this is the weathering of the ballast, which is also a task I want to do on the layout next, just so I can then move on to the next stage in a particular area. So now that I'm up closer to the track, you can see that I have weathered the sides of the rails. I haven't quite yet weathered the sleepers, but whether I'll do that, I probably won't do that until I have weathered the ballast. So to do the weathering of the ballast, I'm going to use two different methods. One of them the traditional airbrushing method, which is what I've used already on the main layout. But then I also want to try a different method, which is one I saw online, and I've noticed if quite a few modelers use this method, and it also does eliminate the need for an airbrush. So as you can see, the track weathering I've done so far on my layout, I've really gone for a more heavy effect than what most would go for. I did go off just pictures I'd taken in the past, but also pictures I found online. I have tried different tones in different areas to maybe represent brake dust when locos are braking and the trains are slowing down. And there's also maybe some fuel leakages every here and there. This section of track I want to look somewhat different to the main line, particularly this end, because I'm going to be focusing more on a sort of a semi-overgrown siding but still gets used. So it's certainly not looked after but still in use. So the overgrowth will probably cover half of this siding and then it will just sort of ease off and then go back to just you know, well kept track, no vegetation sort of within it up into the crossing. So I've just finished weathering this section of the track with the airbrush, and the paints I used are these two. Just going to get them now. So there's UA722 and UA720. 720 is track dirt and the other one is roof dirt. I've used these on the layout already, and I've basically done a first layer of the roof dirt, then the second layer was with the track dirt, and then the third and final layer was the roof dirt again. I did try and create tones in different places just so it's not the same, doesn't look the same all the way. So I am happy with that. So it's the following day, but just in front of you is where the mess up occurred, and I hope it isn't too obvious, but I did try and neat it up and tidy it up as best as I could. And if I just come to the left, you can see where I used the airbrush just to finish off, but this time I went for a much lighter effect than what I'd previously used, and I must admit that does look, I really do like how that came out. So I've decided to use that sort of appearance with the rest of the tracks on my layout, because I've got the crossing dividing it, so I think it would be a nice opportunity just to change things up a little bit. And then if I just come to the right ever so slightly, you can see where it blends, and I'm just going to move the tripod a bit as well. So on the right hand side is where it's a lot heavier. So that's my two choices of style, or weathering, whatever you want to call it, for what I've got to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to ballast this track, but I'll do that off video so it keeps the focus on the weathering. And then I'm going to use this advantage and show how I built up the tones on the lighter side. So just come back over to the left. So I'm going to weather the rest of my track using this method, and I'm going to show how I done that in a time lapse. As I quite liked the hand painting method, I thought I'd use it again, and I painted the rails on the little section I was working on using the UA720 track dirt paint. As I used water-based paints, it dried fairly quickly, so I was able to move on and start the airbrushing. But before I do any airbrushing, I always just double check to see if it's all nice and clean and ready to use. The first colour I used was the roof dirt colour, even though in this particular instance, because I'd run out of that colour, I used the weathered black, which is by the same company, and the code is UA723. So I just used the weathered black colour just to tone down the ballast a little bit till I was happy. Then I changed the track dirt colour and just ever so slightly toned down the ballast even more, just to give it more of a brown appearance. And I just wanted to, again, create some tones as I'd done it, rather than have it look the same the whole way along. I found that quite important, and really it's as simple as that. So here you can see the finished result. I hope it does look somewhat better and different to the two tracks beside it. But one thing I did have to bear in mind was that this track, because of how heavily weathered it is, I did have to blend the sides of this track around this side just to blend in a bit more, and to do that I just use a bit more of the brown during the airbrushing. But then as I came more this way and along the back there, I used a bit less of it, and I am happy with how it turned out. There are some touches more at the end here, or there are some bits on the side here that I didn't touch very much, because I did again want that less weathered effect. So I'm happy with how it turned out. What I'm going to do now in the meantime is just come along here and give it the same sort of treatment, and then once it gets to around just after the point, so around here somewhere, that's where I'll stop for now, and then I'm going to then focus on weathering the track up here in the much more heavier state that I've done on the diorama. So as you can see, I finished the weathering up to the point where I said I would, just in front of the point. And I'm going to just finish off the last straight in the next video. But because I'm going to be focusing quite significantly heavier on that area, I just thought I'd leave that out. I'm happy with how it looks. One thing to point out is that the points, well, all of my points in fact, on the scenic section anyway, they're all electrofog points, which are wired up and powered by a polarity switch in the point motors. So I don't have to worry about getting them dirty. They'll always conduct the electricity through the polarity switch. If you're someone that uses the Interfrog points, or at least haven't wired your points up yet, then I suggest not to weather it until you either get electrofrogs or until you wire them up. If you just stick with your Interfrog, then you will need to keep the catch blades clean, so in the gaps between the rails, because you'll be relying on the conductivity there, whereas I don't have to. So that was, apart from that, not really much else to say. So to finish the video off, I'm just going to test this section out, make sure the points still work. Just going to clean the track first, then turn the power on. So there we go, that's all been tried and tested and I'm happy with it. So all I've got to do now is just patch up or go over the patch up with the airbrush, just blend it all in, make it look like it never happened. Then once I've done that, I'm happy with it, and then I can move on to the siding and just work on that, make that even heavier. But that'll be the focus of the next video. So that pretty much brings an end to this one, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments and give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope it's inspired you to do some track weathering on your own layout perhaps, or just in general modelling at all. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one guys, and cheers for watching again. Take care and happy modelling.